Madhyamaka has been called, in the best book that there is on the subject, the central philosophy of Buddhism. And is not what we call in the West a philosophy at all. It's a method for changing your state of consciousness. In other words, it's not a system of ideas such as propounded, say, by Plato or by Kant or by Hegel. It's a dialectical method. That is to say, dialectic being in the sense of a discourse between a teacher and a student, the purpose of which is not to explain or inculcate a certain set of ideas, but to change one's basic state of feeling. That is to say, to change the sensation that you have of your own existence. All Buddhism is concerned with this. What is the very crux of Buddhism, the thing that is called Bodhi, B-O-D-H-I, which means awakening. It comes from the same root as the word Buddha, B-O-D-H, Bud, or B-U-D-H, Bud, is to know, but better to be awake. You know, some of you have probably exposed yourselves to the teachings of Gurdjieff, the wonderful old rascal who used to give lectures in which he would keep completely silent for a while and get everybody embarrassed. And then, you know, they were all expecting something to happen, and he would look individually at everybody in the group. And when everybody was feeling awkward, he would say, "Wake up!" "You're all asleep. And if you don't wake up, I won't give any lecture." And this is a very good attitude, actually. Zen, as you know, uses shock tactics of various kinds. And the whole idea then is that a person who is under illusion, maya, thinks of himself basically as a victim, someone caught in a trap, somebody subject to fate, the will of God, or whatever you want to call it, who got involved in life passively. That's why I use the word victim. And he has this, therefore, the sensation of his consciousness as being a kind of passive, but nevertheless very delicate and tender receptor or percipient of everything that goes on, so that life in general occurs to you. It happens to you, and there's nothing you can do about it. And you say, well, it's awful. I can't get myself out of this trap. So the technique of the philosophical dialogue that I was describing as a Madhyamaka is to get you to drop your defenses. In other words, you can discover as practically a physical sensation that you tend to be on the defensive all the time. You are exerting through every muscle, practically, a resistance against the world, all of which is excessive. In other words, you need a certain resistance. You need a certain muscular tonus. But your body does that for you. You don't need to will it. It's like you, if you lie on the floor and relax, you don't need to do anything to hold yourself together. The floor will hold you up, and your skin will hold you inside it. But most people are actually doing things to hold themselves together, even in this situation of complete relaxation, because they don't really trust their own life. And that is the lack of trust in one's own life, the perpetual attitude of defensiveness, is a result of a kind of misfeeling of one's own existence as something alien to the universe that endures, as I said, and is simply a passive recipient of experience. So then, the whole process of a therapeutic dialogue, which was invented by this marvelous man, Nāgārjuna, in the following of the Buddha, because it's a strange thing that the Buddha was very, very creative towards other people. That is to say, the basic idea of Buddhism does not preclude other people being just as much Buddha as Buddha was. There's a little difficulty in Christianity about this, you see, because everybody harks back to the Christ as the unique and only incarnation of God. And so he is on a very special pedestal, which nobody else is ever allowed to climb up on. And this, of course, makes the teaching and work of Jesus completely ineffective. But Buddhism had the advantage that they never did that. And so that Nāgārjuna, who could come later than Buddha, was in a way a wiser man than the Buddha himself. But only because he stood on the shoulders of Buddha and carried the Buddha's dialogue to its full not its full conclusion, but to a full conclusion. We can go further today, you see. This thing hasn't stopped at all. It isn't something that we go back to as a past and say, well, we're going to tell you all about a thing called Buddhism, which is a fixed body of practices and beliefs in which certain people in Asia believe, and if you're interested, you can believe in it too. It's not like that at all. It's an activity that is going on, and when it gets mixed up in the context of Western civilization, Western science, Western technology, will do things that the Asian people never dreamed of and might not even approve of. So it's very important in approaching this. This is one of our difficulties, you see. If I were a lecturer on Buddhism in the context of the academic world, I would have to observe certain game rules. That is to say, I would have to discuss the subject as entirely historical, as something of the past, and I would be expected to give you extremely accurate information about what it was, what other people thought, and what they did. The moment I began to suggest that this thing had any vitality to it and might have some effect upon you, I would be ruled out as academically unrespectable. They would say, well, this man is no longer qualified to be a professor because he is advocating these things and not taking an objective point of view to it. You see, it's very funny. All obsolete subjects are studied by the historical method. So if you study in the university religion, it comes under the heading of the history of religions. Philosophy, the introductory course in philosophy is usually history of philosophy. Just imagine teaching children mathematics with the introductory course, History of Mathematics, so that they would start doing sums in Egyptian and Roman numerals, and going through all the procedures that ancient man went through to arrive at modern mathematics. Imagine a first course in medicine. They proceed immediately to practical matters, the most up-to-date knowledge of the human physiology, and they teach that. Only when you become a graduate school in the history of medicine do you run across an elective course in the history of medical science. So this way of putting everything at a distance of history is a way of castrating it, making it completely ineffective, so that it won't do anything anymore. So that's why I, for example, cannot work in the academic world, because although I know their game rules and how to study Buddhism from the historical method, when you get involved in that after a while, nobody's interested. It just becomes completely boring. You can acquire yourself a huge library